Welcome to EPG Pathashala. I am Dr. T. Uma Joseph from St. Francis College for Women, Hyderabad. Today we will be discussing about Sati in 19th century India in women and history. I would like to tell you a few things that we're going to discuss in this lesson. We're going to discuss about the connotation of the term Sati itself. Then we will move on to looking at when did Sati really begin and where was it practiced and the different places in which it took place. We are also going to look at the reform movements in this direction for the abolition of Sati. We are also looking at the critiques of Sati in India. And obviously we will conclude with the fact that Sati was always considered a crime and all efforts were made to ban it. Let's move on to discussing about what really Sati means. The term Sati is derived from the legend Sati, who was the wife of Shiva. And according to the legend, Sati went to attend a yajna at her father's place, and when she went there, she realizes that her husband Shiva was not invited, and therefore she throws herself on the fire of the sacrifice in rage. And though actually if you look at the meaning of the whole incident, it doesn't attribute to what Sati really means, because Sati as we know it today is the widow burning herself alive on the funeral pyre of her husband. Though this incident and the word Sati as we know it today is not related, yet this term Sati came to be attributed to the widow immolating herself on the cremation pyre of her husband. Let's look at some of the facts that we need to know about Sati. In fact, the Vedas do not mention Sati at all, nor do they advise Sati. We only have stray references to Sati even in the Mahabharata. In fact, one of the great authors, Banabhatta, you must be knowing about Banabhatta. He lived in the court of one of the great kings, Harshavardhana, in the 7th century AD. Banabhatta mentions about this practice of Sati at that time, especially in the region of Gandhara. He says that it was in Gandhara, he says, that the place that was conquered by Alexander the Great, who came from Macedonia. He explains about the practice of Sati in these regions. Bana also condemns this practice, and in fact he calls it as a sin. And he says that, those of them who practice it thinking that it would bring any kind of boon, it would only bring a lot of bane, because according to him, Sati was a sin as it was suicide. We also see references to that from different other sources. We have even all these women who committed Sati, shrines were erected for them, memorial stones were erected for these women, and then they were worshipped as goddess later on. And we see these Sati stones now available in different places. We see it in Vijayanagar period, that is in the 16th century, but we also see it in different parts of coastal Andhra. We see it in central India. We also see it in Rajasthan and in sporadic places in all over India. Many of them try to legalize Sati by saying that the widow immolated herself voluntarily. Now this was done only to make it appear that this was not a crime. In fact, it was something that she did in order for the good of herself and for the family as well as for the society at large. But then the widow was made to feel that since she did it voluntarily, the flames that engulfed her when she was lying on the funeral pyre of her husband would actually be very cooling for her. The fact that they always wanted to show that it was voluntarily, it was because they believed that this practice was legalized by making them feel that it was a voluntary practice. But what all said and done, Sati has been regarded as an inhuman practice, and scholars have debated about it in different times. Especially we are focusing today on the 19th century. Now, number of reformers, number of leaders have made great efforts to stop this practice of Sati. But one of the names that really stands out as far as abolition of Sati is concerned is Raja Ram Mohan Roy. He was a great social reformer who worked tirelessly in order to bring this movement to an end. He found a good partner in the then British Governor General Lord William Bentinck. In 1929, sati was abolished, but you will realize that a lot of effort had to go into this whole process. Let's look at some of the efforts that they had made. First of all, some of the things that we need to keep in mind is that sati was not rampant all over India as we usually assume. Especially sati was also sporadic. Sati was also concentrated especially in the region of Bengal. So it's not correct to think that this anti-sati movement led by Raja Ram Mohan Roy was in Bengal alone, because this practice was very rampant in this region. It was also practiced sporadically in different parts of India. Especially in Bengal also you see that this was practiced among the landed families, and even in Bengal many of the scholars say that it was practiced sporadically. There are a number of critiques to the practice of sati, in the sense that there are different opinions about whether the practice or the abolition of sati took place only during the colonial period. Was it only the efforts of Lord William Bentinck and Raja Ram Mohan Roy which brought about the abolition of sati? Was there no one else in the past who spoke against it? But you will understand that even as early as the 7th century AD, Banabhatta spoke about it. I was telling you earlier that he lived in the court of Harshavardhana, and he spoke in very clear terms about how sati was not a practice to be emulated, but it was a practice that should be banned immediately. Meda Tithi prohibits it in the 10th century. He says that it is totally against the Shastras, and therefore there is no way that you can legalize sati. Aparaka criticizes it in the 12th century, following Virata's prohibition. Even Devana Bhatta from South India, he vehemently criticized it. In the medieval period, you have heard about the great Mughal emperor Akbar the Great. Akbar did a lot for the reforms of the society. Akbar is known for his very liberal religious views. In fact, his policy towards the local population was not to alienate them, but to bring about a conciliation with them. He was genuinely concerned about some of the social issues that were prevalent there. Though during his time, Akbar never abolished sati, he did not bring any law to ban it, yet he made lot of efforts to prohibit the practice of sati. According to the sources that are available of that period, they say that Akbar sent his officials to different parts of his empire in order to see whether sati was committed voluntarily or whether it was forced. And in cases where it was forced, he asked his officers to prevent them from committing this act. It also says that Akbar gave pension to the widows, he gave gifts to the widows, he even provided some rehabilitation measures for them so that they would not be considered as a burden in the society, as a result of which they always took this opportunity to burn them alive in the funeral pyre of their husband. One of the Sikh, Guru Amar Das, he also denounced it vehemently both in the 15th and the 16th century. As far as the Marathas are concerned, now Maratha Empire was a mighty empire under their leader Shivaji. A lot of efforts were made in order to strengthen them, in order to strengthen their roots, in order to strengthen the whole feeling of nationalism among them in that kingdom. But one of the things that stood out about them and their reforms and their policies also was that they vehemently condemned sati. All of us know that the 15th and the 16th century is a period when the European companies came to India. We have a number of them that came to India, starting with the Portuguese, the Dutch, the French, and finally the English. And you know that the English stayed on and they ruled over our country for 200 years. Now these European companies, they came mainly for the purpose of trade. But when they came here, they realized that when they would set up factories here in India and then move on and become as colonial masters here, they would get greater benefits. So when they began to have colonies in this region, they started to introduce laws here. And one of the laws that they used, to prohibit was prohibit the practice of sati in this region. All of them banned sati in their colonies in India. Why was the whole movement against sati so strong as far as Bengal is concerned? That is one question that is in the mind of a number of people. In fact, many of the scholars even say that as far as the practice of sati is concerned, it was sporadic. It was as far as different parts of the country is concerned. But as far as Bengal is concerned, it was more frequent. For a long period of time, even the rulers ignored it. They thought that they would not interfere in the social practices of the people. But later on, every one of them came to know that the woman was forced to commit this act. And therefore, you had a leader in them, that is Raja Ram Mohan Roy. As I stated earlier, it was Raja Ram Mohan Roy who was going to lead this crusade against sati. As far as Raja Ram Mohan Roy was concerned, he was totally involved in this whole movement against sati because of even certain personal reasons. His own sister-in-law became sati. And you will see, if you look at the statistics, between the period 1815 and 1825, the figure of those who committed sati had doubled to 639 deaths. And this disturbed Raja Ram Mohan Roy totally. And he decided that he would start this campaign against this custom. He started this whole movement, the Brahma Samaj. Now, they took care of a number of issues, especially regarding emancipation of women in India. Now, he also started a journal in order to popularize his views. He realized that there were so many things that were lacking in the Indian society, and one of them was this lack of information that could pass on to others. And therefore, he even wrote a number of articles. He brought out even a publication so that he could explain to the people the whole practice and how even the whole Indian tradition was against it. There were many efforts that Raja Ram Mohan Roy made. In fact, he formed a number of bands of what he called as watch groups, and they would go to different parts of India, especially in Bengal, where sati was practiced, and he would watch if a woman was asked to burn herself on the fire by force or whether she was doing it voluntarily. And if she was doing it by force, they would stop that act immediately. So they kept a watch on the cremation grounds in order to prohibit this act. He even went to the extent of circulating a number of pamphlets and articles because he believed that most of the time people did it out of ignorance. They did not even know that it was not necessary for them to practice this crime. And therefore, one of the things that he really crusaded was in order to create awareness among the people. Coming back to the partnership that Raja Ram Mohan Roy and Lord William Bentinck had. Now, Raja Ram Mohan Roy approached Lord William Bentinck and asked for his support to ban this practice. Earlier, Lord William Bentinck was very reluctant because there were many things that were playing in his mind. He felt that probably that would be an intrusion into the Indian customs and traditions. He was also afraid that probably the Indian soldiers would revolt. And therefore it says that he sent about more than 50 circulars to all the administrators in different provinces. And he asked them to conduct a survey to see what would be the feedback when this whole legislation would come on sati. And after a while, he read all the reports that were sent to him, and he got the news that there would be no negative impact, especially on the army. Probably he did not want a mutiny to take place during this time. And after careful consideration, in December 1829, sati was abolished. In fact, a law was passed to abolish sati. He did not stop with that. He wanted to see that this law was effectively implemented all over the region. He was also aware of the fact that not all the people would be aware that such a law was practiced. and that such a law would come into practice. And therefore he made the zamindars, the petty landowners, the local agents and officers in charge of revenue collection in that area, their responsibility was to go into different places and to check if such a crime was still committed even after the law was enforced. And if at all they got any information that a sati was going to be practiced in a particular place, they would rush to that place and they would prevent sati from taking place. What if they reached that place after sati was committed? It would not stop, the responsibility did not stop there. They would have to conduct a total and complete inquiry of the incident that had taken place. They would have to do it in the same way as you do it for an unnatural death. Was there any opposition to the ban on sati in India? Definitely there was opposition. Now many of them, especially the Orthodox Brahmins, they felt that Lord William Bentinck was interfering with their traditions and their religion. They said that religious freedom was curtailed if they did not allow them to practice the religion the way they wanted to. They felt that they were, according to their tradition, they had the freedom to practice their religion as they wanted. But in spite of all the petitions that were put before the Governor General, in spite of even cases that were lodged against him, Lord William Bentinck did not relent. Now he came to know that this element of voluntariness was removed from the argument, because many of them argued that the whole focus was on the abolition of sati, but they were not looking at the picture of what was the condition of the woman if she did not commit sati. Whether voluntary or not, the act was deemed as homicide. And Lord William Bentinck made it very clear that death penalty was spelt out for the crime. As far as the efforts of Raja Ram Mohan Roy and Lord William Bentinck are concerned, it was appreciated by different sections in the society. In fact, one of the group of people who really worked on them to abolish sati were the Christian missionaries. In fact, they were very vehement and they had a great influence both on Lord William Bentinck as well as Raja Ram Mohan Roy to stop this practice. Even if you look at the early period in the, when sati was banned, it was received well and there was great appreciation. But the later scholars, they criticized it. In fact, by saying that the Brahmanical scriptures were given prominence and the widow was marginalized in the debate. But there was no way in which they could substantiate the statement. Another charge which they usually brought against the British was that the British never really understood the Indian society. And therefore, many of the laws that they brought, many of the policies that they introduced in India were detrimental to the Indians, and they also felt that it hurt the sentiments of the Indians. Many of the scholars argued that sati was criticized even in the Indian tradition. Now, these critics say that the British Empire and the British, they take a lot of credit for putting to an end a number of social practices that were in India which were evil. But the critics say that this practice of sati was condemned from times immemorial. It has been suggested also that sati was not rampant all over India, where there was, and they also say that sati was practiced more in areas where there was continuous political or military disturbance, or where the region was conquered. Though they are not able to see a link between the two of them, often they argue that it is in these areas that you see that sati was more rampant. This argument definitely needs to be studied in greater depth, as it seems to explain the rise of sati sporadically. When we look at the overall picture of sati, there are certain things that we need to really keep in mind. That sati, it was not rampant all over India, or even if you look at it in the specific areas. Evidences are also few and far between long time gaps. We do not have evidence sometimes of sati being practiced even for years together. Even in areas where it was followed, it was not followed regularly. And also, You could not say that it was followed by all families. There were only certain families that followed it, and it was also followed on certain occasions only. Whatever be the time and whoever is an authority, we must conclude that sati is a heinous crime and not to be promoted at any cost. What about the practice of sati in independent India? Does sati exist even after India got her freedom in 1947? In fact, we even heard of the incident of sati as late as 1987. All of us are aware of the incident of Roop Kanwar, the incident of sati that took place during that time. But we know that this practice was condemned universally and all over India, and in fact it was considered as a crime and legal action was taken against this incident. An honest scholar should accept that sati was a barbarous practice in some sections of Bengal, and the British did well to ban it. The reality is that it was essentially a Bengal practice, and even in Bengal, it was restricted to a few families who followed it only on certain occasions. The history of a practice of a section of Bengal cannot be made into a history of the whole of India. Hence, this practice has to be seen in its regional context and not as a pan-Indian context meant to civilize India. Another viewpoint of a critic was that it was not a specifically colonial phenomena. It had existed throughout history. The most insightful study of sati has been done by another group of scholars who have taken care to study the incidence of sati in history. Attempts by the pre-colonial Indians to denounce, restrict and prohibit this practice have also dwelt on the complexity of 19th century Bengal. They make an interesting point that the practice of sati was sporadic and its incidence increased in times of war and conquest. The reference by the Greeks is important in this context, so are the references to Rajasthan and Sikhs in the light of the number of invasions they had to face. In case of Bengal too, the incidence increased in the 19th century when Calcutta became the seat of the British power. So today we have actually seen the practice of sati in 19th century Bengal. There are so many things that we have focused on today. All of us universally condemn the practice of sati, but there is no rationale to it at all for those who support it. You will also realize that sati was not condemned or banned only in colonial India. Right from ancient times, efforts have been made to ban it and to control the practice of this event. You'll see that right from ancient times, even the Vedas do not advise it, nor do they mention it. Mahabharata only refers to very sporadic events that were there. You will see that all the writers, both in ancient as well as medieval India, they very clearly condemned it. Even the Mughal Emperor Akbar spoke against it and made efforts to stop it. When you come to the modern period, the European companies that came to India, they also spoke against it. And it was only in the 19th century that sati was finally banned when Lord William Bentinck took the decision to call it as illegal. As far as independent India is concerned, all efforts are made to ensure that this is not practiced in any part of the country. Committing sati is a crime and is considered a homicide. Thank you.